Hello and welcome to the 64th episode of the JaguarReport podcast. I am riding solo this week as I am unfortunately set to announce that co-host Gus Logue is no longer with the podcast. You see, I tweeted that people were upset about Calvin Ridley due to expectations in fantasy football, and Gus went on to say in the media room, "John, aren't you people?" So Gus has been let go, and we'll be moving forward solo. No, Gus is on vacation, so it'll be just me previewing Jaguars versus Steelers. Big Week 8 game in the context of if the Jaguars win, they improve to 6-2, and for like the good teams, like the consistently good teams in the NFL, the Eagles, the Chiefs, etc. 6-2, like it's obviously great, but it's also kind of the expectation. The Jaguars have only been 6-2 or better through 8 games twice in their entire franchise history. 1998, 1999, two of the objectively best, if not the best teams the Jaguars have ever had. So the Jaguars are a win against Kenny Pickett away from, objectively one of the three best starts in franchise history, which is wild considering after week 3, the panic button was being hit with a hammer, more or less, including, even, by myself. But it's a good lesson that NFL seasons are long, results wane basically week in and week out, and it's more about what you do over a large sample size than what you maybe do in the opening month of the season. And also, people's expectations don't matter. they don't matter. What matters is what happens on the field on Sundays and also Thursdays and Mondays, whatever. It has the Jaguars offense been as good as people and I am people predicted? No, but no offense in the NFL really has. I mean, Miami's offense has obviously been extremely high powered, one of the best in the league, but even them, they've played two good defenses this year, at least Buffalo's defense before half of their roster, went on injured reserve, and their offense looked pretty mortal in both of those games. So I'm confident offenses in the NFL can score against the Carolina Panthers, but it seems like across the league, nobody's offense is really clicking at a super high and consistent rate, which leads me to believe that the Jaguars are right, really where they want to be. So week 8, Pittsburgh Steelers. I am extremely fascinated in this matchup for a number of reasons. I'm a big Mike Tomlin fan. Personally, I think Mike Tomlin is probably the second best head coach in the NFL right now after Andy Reid. Like, just the consistency of his teams. Like, the Steelers should not be 4-2 right now at all. So I think that, while the Jaguars are the better team on paper, while they have a better roster, while they clearly have a better quarterback, I do think any game with the Steelers is more or less a dogfight because of Mike Tomlin. So Jaguars at Steelers, week 8. Jaguars had a lot of success there in the past. This will be Doug Peterson's first time over there as Jaguars head coach. I think the big thing to focus on, at least offensively, is the Jaguars versus TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Those are two guys who are really good edge rushers in the sense of making game-changing plays. And I don't mean just like sacks and pressures and tackles for loss. Like, they're obviously all good at that. But creating turnovers is one of the things that they are absolutely best at. And it's a Jaguars offense that has struggled, with strip sacks, over the last 2 years. Trevor Lawrence, for all of his obviously high quality traits, the one thing is that he has struggled with throughout his entire NFL career is fumbles, especially in the pocket. He's susceptible to strip sacks because, good friend, one of the best quarterback analysts out there, Derek Klassen, hypothesized that he's literally just too skinny, like his frame is too small to really protect the ball at times, and it's easy for defenders basically to wrap around his entire frame and knock the ball out. And you combine that with his never say, die attitude on any given play. And, I think that's where you get, you're obviously going to live with the highs, live with some of the lows. And there aren't many lows, but if there are any, it's probably the fumbles. So I think that is the big thing for the offense to watch this week. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith each have 2 forced fumbles this year. two guys who are really good at. TJ Watt's obviously one of the best pass rushers, overall defenders and players in the league. He can win a number of ways. Alex Highsmith is a really good speed guy who can dip around the edge. He honestly, the type of pass rusher who I think, in my opinion, Cam Robinson has had some struggles with in the past. You're mostly going to see Cam Robinson versus Alex Highsmith, and then TJ Watt versus Anton Harrison. And what I'm interested to see is how often the Jaguars basically leave Anton Harrison on an island against an all-pro defensive player of the year type player. Because you go back, Arjon Mignon, a really good analytical, guy on Twitter, put out a stat, how often NFL offenses leave their offensive tackles on islands through weeks 1 through 7. The Jaguars are at the fourth highest clip behind just the Eagles, Colts, and Panthers. So they basically leave their offensive tackles to, fight on their own. They're not a big chip team. They're not a big max protect team. They do a lot of 5-man protection. That came back to bite the Jaguars in one of their only 2 losses, obviously. Chris Jones versus Anton Harrison really, in my opinion, the deciding factor of that game was Chris Jones, beating Anton Harrison on some key downs, on some money downs where the Jaguars otherwise would have had open options. The Jaguars' biggest mistake in that game was not giving Anton help. It kind of seemed like a game that they were thinking offensively, okay, this is how we play. It doesn't matter who's at tackle. Like Cole Van Lannon could have been at tackle, and I feel like they wouldn't have given him help. But, their mindset was this is how we play. We're not going to change who we are. But sometimes you just have to. The Jaguars, they're not a big chip team, but, Luke Farrell's like a little spot in the passing offense, should be as the chip guy. I'm interested to see how much that changes this week against the Steelers because this is the first game since the Chiefs game. And they've played other good pass rushers since then, but no guys who I think, you have to particularly worry about Anton Harrison on an island against. He has one of the lowest pressure rates of any right tackle in football, this year. But now that you're playing against a guy like TJ Watt who can impact the game, who really no team should ever leave on an island. Do the Jaguars change their philosophy? Because it was literally a reason that they lost one of their only games. That, to me, is going to be the most interesting thing to watch on offense is how much help do they give Anton Harrison? Because in my opinion, for as good of a rookie as he has been, I know there are some different things out there. He's like, I think, dead last at ESPN's pass pro win rate. My stance in regards to which metrics matter, and like there's a reason I never do stories and stuff on win rate from like them. Like nothing against them. I don't find much merit in the ESPN win rate metrics. I don't. They're double team metrics, I do. But in terms of blocking efficiency, I look at Next Gen, Sports Info Solutions. The blown block percentage is really good. PFF with their blocking efficiency. Those are the 3 places I trust more so when it comes to evaluating offensive and defensive alignment than ESPN's win rate metrics, just because I don't know. Gus put it well. It feels like win rate, like, a lot of it is distance between them and the defender or distance between them and the blocker. And that just doesn't add a lot of context on, any given play. So I feel like Anton's been better than that ranking would, suggest, obviously. But even then, I think you still have to give him a lot of help against TJ Watt. So if I'm the Jaguars, I'm playing Luke Farrell a lot this weekend, and I'm basically telling him, like, okay, even if you're, running a route, your job is to get 2 hands on TJ Watt first. That's the big thing you hear in the NFL. Like, let's get 4 hands on a guy. Like, they need to get 4 hands on TJ Watt, in my opinion, to really have a shot to keep the offense out of some of the turnovers that I think could hurt them. Because in my opinion, if there's any way for the Jaguars to lose, this game or really any game against bad teams that they shouldn't, it's turnovers. You look at the Houston Texans game, fumbles, interceptions, block kicks. all those turnovers led, to them losing to a team they shouldn't lose to. So if you don't want to lose to bad teams, don't turn the ball over. You got to protect the ball. It was almost the reason they lost last week to the Saints. They fumbled twice in, the first two quarters. Otherwise, the Steelers defense, Cam Hayward might get back. He's not the, I'd say, elite defender that he once was, but he's still a really good player. He would probably give the Jaguars interior line, some trouble. Keanu Benton, I think, is a really good rookie interior defensive lineman. I honestly think he's, if Jalen Carter wasn't having a special rookie season, I think Benton would be getting a lot more pub. So I think he's a guy to really watch for the Jaguars this weekend. I think he can be a game wrecker. Minka Fitzpatrick, obviously you have to be aware of where he is. He can do a lot of different things in coverage as a blitzer. Another guy who's really good at forcing takeaways. And then the cornerbacks. The cornerbacks is where I think the Jaguars can and should take advantage this weekend, even without potentially Zay Jones. I'm of the opinion that Zay Jones doesn't play this weekend because just covering Doug Peterson for 2 years now, normally it seems like his philosophy is like, if you don't practice, you don't play. And you can even practice in a limited, scaled down capacity. But if you're a DNP all week, I don't think that you play. So he's missed practice Wednesday and Thursday. Even though Peterson oddly said Wednesday before practice that he would practice this week, he hasn't practiced at all. So I'm thinking you don't see Zay Jones back until after the bye week. That obviously impacts a lot their offense. Check out Gus's Twitter feed. He is a really good example of how Zay's, absence kind of creates an impact with the Jaguars passing game. They would have Calvin Ridley as a point man, Jamal Agnew going in motion, and being the target. When normally you'd have Ridley as the guy in motion and Zay Jones being the point man and setting things up. So I'm interested to see how much the passing game changes when he gets back, but I don't expect Zay Jones back until week 10 versus the 49ers. So even with that said, I still like the Jaguars matchups receiver-wise. And obviously, Evan Ingram against the guys that you're going to see, in Pittsburgh's defense. I think Joey Porter Jr. has had a really encouraging season. He made some nice plays against Puka Nacua last week, a fellow rookie. So Porter Jr. is obviously kind of their best cornerback, falling away right now. I'd expect him on Ridley a good bit. Otherwise, Levi Wallace, the other outside corner, has really, really struggled this year. I'm not sure the Jaguars can take advantage of that, considering it's, Agnew or Tim Jones or Elijah Cooks that would be out there. Maybe you split out Evan Ingram some and try to get that matchup, take advantage of that. But Levi Wallace has struggled a lot this year. I think anytime you can get, Zay Jones on Christian Kirk on Levi Wallace, I think that would be a win for the Jaguars. And then Patrick Peterson. I never would have guessed that Patrick Peterson would ever be a slot corner, in his career. But that's what he is right now for the Steelers. He played almost 30 snaps in the slot last week. It really seems like that's the position in their defense that is, really struggling at this point in time. I think it's a big Christian Kirk week. You look at the Steelers defense, it's a lot of one high. They run, according to SIS, the 9th highest clip of man coverage in the league. They blitz at the 5th highest rate. So it's a man, press blitz type team. Like we saw against the Saints, like we saw against the Chiefs, and those were big Kirk weeks. I think, unfortunately, for all the takes out there, it'll be another big Kirk week, not a big Calvin Ridley week, and I expect people to freak out for the next 2 weeks about it. I mean, the tape shows, Press Taylor had a good quote about it yesterday. Ridley's presence alone opens up a lot for the Jaguars, and it's a big reason why Kirk has been able to eat. And I think it happens again this weekend. So, personally, I don't expect the Jaguars to have a lot of issues in the passing game as long as they can protect Lawrence on the edges and as long as Lawrence is taking care of the ball. In terms of the running game, the Steelers surprisingly have, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL right now. They're allowing, over 4 yards a carry, and teams are really, not struggling at moving the ball against them on the ground. So it's kind of like a movable object meets a stoppable force because the Jaguars don't have a good running game. Travis Etienne is obviously on a crazy pace. If he scores 2 rushing touchdowns, he'd be the first guy since LT did it in 4 straight games. And LT is like 28 touchdown a year, which is absolutely insane. But it's still not an efficient or effective running game on an every down basis. They're kind of living and dying on Etienne having a large volume and being able to break off a couple big plays here and there. Still, though, I like the Jaguars' offensive matchup overall against the Steelers' defense. I think it's a big Kirk week, not a big Ridley week. If that doesn't happen, sue me. That's what I see happening. So we will break real quick and be right back to cover the defense. All right. Jaguars defense versus Kenny Two Gloves Pickett. I've never been shy about I don't like Kenny Pickett as a quarterback. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I feel like every positive Kenny Pickett play is a play like your average NFL quarterback should make. Like, okay, good timing on this, slant. Like he doesn't, in my opinion, do anything that really moves me. But on the flip side, excuse me, I need to sneeze. Sorry about that. But on the flip side, the Jaguars do have a defense that I'm not sure how well they can defend the back shoulder. Sorry about that again. It's tougher to break for sneezes when you're going solo here, So apologies for that. But overall, I think the Steelers' offense is just it's struggling right now. It has not been a good offense. My goodness, I apologize. I'm really sorry, but it has not been a good offense really all season. It's bottom 6 in both EPA per play and success rate. Like the Steelers' boogeyman has been Matt Canada, but I don't think that's fair. I think the Steelers have a lot more issues than Matt Canada. I think they have offensive line issues. Dan Moore, iffy left tackle. You saw when the Jaguars played the Steelers in the preseason game last year, like Dan Moore was basically getting, the Jaguars are getting anything they wanted. And he has not gotten that much better since then. You look, across the line, Mason Cole has really struggled at center. I know the Jaguars don't get a lot of pressure up the middle just because they don't really have the personnel to do so. But I do believe that, they have the ability to generate some looks, pressure looks, some overload formations, maybe get Smoot and Walker in the middle to really take advantage of, the Steelers' weaknesses across their offensive line. As for Kenny Pickett, other than the back shoulder, and that's the one thing I think the Jaguars have to be wary of. It's the only thing the Steelers' offense really does well is the back shoulder throws to George Pickens that are explosive plays. George Pickens, a great vertical receiver. To Pickett's credit, he's pretty accurate on the back shoulder passes. I think he missed one against the Rams that should have been caught. Should have been completed. It was caught out of bounds, but it should have been completed. He threw it out of bounds, but otherwise, he's pretty good at that. Pickens is one of my favorite prospects in that draft coming out of Georgia because he obviously can do a lot of things well. He's like your stereotypical X receiver. He can run pretty much any route. He's really good vertical. He's a good blocker. He's extremely unwell. he's definitely going to do stuff during games. Like I know people call him like the NFL, like NBA young boy. And like, Charles McDonald, had a great quote on him last year. He said, every team needs one, George Pickens, but just one. they only need one. And obviously, George has had that big quote going around where he calls the Jaguars a hope defense. And, he basically said that they rely on their front and that they hope that their front can get to the quarterback quick enough for the secondary to hold up. That obviously doesn't make any sense. The Jaguars are like a middling pressure rate team. I think they're like 17th in pressure rate. They're bottom 5 in sack percentage. Where they thrive is on the back end. Andre Sisco's having a Pro Bowl year. Rayshon Jenkins, in my opinion, is having the best year of his career. Darius Williams is having arguably an all-pro level year. Trey Herndon's had best year of his career. Not sure if Tyson Campbell plays, but if he does, it's obviously another really good player back there. I think, the disconnect there, and I shouldn't say hate because I probably do a good bit, but crapping on other reporters. But Pickens, my issue was more so with the framing of the question and not the quote. To me, the quote doesn't matter. It's a funny quote, but who cares? It doesn't matter. Legitimately, who cares what another player says? But to me, the framing of the question, it was like the Jaguars have had the worst pass defense in the last few weeks. Why have they looked suspectable? And that is an absolutely insane thing to say. That is just it's miseducated at best and woefully ignorant at worst. The Jaguars have given up the most passing yards in the NFL in the last 3 weeks. Do you know why? It's because no team has had more passes thrown against them. In the last 3 games, quarterbacks have thrown 40 or more passes against them. They've had 150 pass attempts against them in the last 3 weeks. The next closest team, the Bears, has had 127. The next closest team is at 107. During that span, the Jaguars are top 15 in completion percentage and yards per attempt allowed. They're number 9 in passing EPA and number 10 in passing success rate. It's been a very good pass defense. Volume stats belong in 2006, 2007 NFL. I think I saw Fox Sports put out a graphic. It was the 5 best defenses this year, and it was by yards allowed per game. And I just want to shake them and be like, no, that's not how any of this works anymore. But I will say that the Jaguars defense, they've given up some plays, explosive plays at times. Gardner Minshew completed 3 passes of, 40 plus yards, and that due to some coverage busts in terms of communication. So they've given up the occasional explosive play, but the reason teams are throwing on them so much and to not even great results is because the Jaguars are taking away the running game in the first half of games. The Jaguars are getting up by a lot of points at halftime, early in the game, and their run defense is completely shutting down opposing teams' running games. Nobody is finding success on the ground against the Jaguars and Mike Caldwell's unit in the NFL. Nobody. So that leads me to, believe that teams are basically realizing early in games, okay, the only way we can hope to move the ball is to throw it, which leads to obviously the high pass attempts. So, if Kenny Pickett throws it 30 times, not 30, 40 times this weekend, that's a win for the Jaguars. It's a win when you make Gardner Minshew have almost 50 passes. It's a win when you make Derek Carr have almost 50 passes. That is good for the defense. It means you are doing something right. So I believe the Jaguars can do it again this weekend. Najee Harris hasn't been that effective. The Steelers running game in terms of efficiency is right up there with the Jaguars, but they're getting obviously fewer explosive plays. I think the Jaguars front is built to stop this specific Steelers, running game. So I think Kenny Pickett's going to have to throw it 40 times or more to win. And then I guess you'll see, what the hope defense is. I don't think the Jaguars defense has much concern about the Steelers offense. And maybe I look stupid. Maybe Kenny Pickett has a career game. I just think the overall vibe and state of this Jaguars defense and what it's good at, what it thrives at, is perfect for against the Steelers offense. The Steelers offense, they've been one of the worst early downs offenses in the entire NFL, if not the worst. They really struggle at getting yards in first and second down whereas the Jaguars excel at stopping teams on first and second down. So you're going to see a lot of third and longs. That's where I think this game is going to be won. Who wins on third and long? The Jaguars pass rush and secondary, or the Steelers offensive line, skill players, and Kenny Pickett? And I take the Jaguars in that battle. I also think that the Steelers struggled a lot with blitzes last week against the Rams. For whatever reason, it seemed like the Rams kind of stopped doing it some in the second half. But I'd expect the Jaguars to bring blitzes a lot. Overall, I don't think the Steelers offense is like one that's overly concerning. I thought the Saints offense was more equipped to get the Jaguars issues. And that's even with the possibility of Montaric Brown starting again this week. I don't think this is a good offense. The Jaguars have done well this year against bad quarterbacks. So I expect that to more or less continue. So going to break real quick and then get into my score prediction. Got Gus's as well. And also get into locks of the week. All right. Real quick. My hot take for this week, and this was, influenced by a big fan of the pod, Ray Roberts. My hot take of the week is Luke Farrell catches a giant touchdown. Luke Farrell. I think the Steelers are going to forget about him. I think you'll see him chipping a lot and then be able to leak out. I think Luke Farrell catches a touchdown this week. So I know, not great in terms of hot take, but is what it is. So Gus's hot take is that Najee Harris will finish with more attempts than yards. So he'll average under a yard per carry. I love that one. That. I wish Gus was here so I could pat him on the back for good takesmanship, because that is a strong one. I like that one. Gus's picks, he has Ridley over 51.5 receiving yards. Gus can't quit. He can't quit. He has Najee over 41.5 rushing yards. I agree with that. He has Allen Robinson over 19.5 receiving yards. I'll be frank, I completely forgot Allen Robinson was on that team. There you go. Nice little revenge type game. Okay, my picks. My lock of the week, Trevor Lawrence over 233.5 passing yards. I think Trevor Lawrence has a big week. I think that Trevor is going to have the kind of week that people have been waiting for him to have. I just don't think that this is a Steelers defense that's very equipped to stop him or the Jaguars, overall passing game. I also really like Travis Etienne over 21.5 receiving yards. I think this could be a big screen week just because of the, nature of the Steelers defense. They're obviously going to blitz a good bit. Christian Kirk, 53.5 receiving yards. I would pound that over. Pound it. I think he easily gets that. Josh Allen, 0.75 sacks. So basically a sack versus half a sack. Yeah, he gets that. He gets that easy this week. Gus's game prediction is the Jaguars roll 34-10, blow out the Chiefs. I don't hate it. I really don't. I think that this is a game that could be close for some stupid reasons, but I could very easily see the Jaguars just steamrolling the Steelers team. Like I said, it's in my opinion, it's not a good team. They're 4-2, but it's a very fraudulent 4-2. Like, they needed the Rams to have multiple missed, field goals, extra points, etc., and then kind of a controversial fourth down. My prediction, I'm not as brazen as Gus. I'll go 2016 Jaguars. I think Trevor Lawrence has like a 300-yard passing day, but like 2 touchdowns. And I think the Jaguars basically go into cruise control in the second half. I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game just because of the nature of, again, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. I think that they're going to cause a turnover here and there. It's a road game in a tough environment. But I do think the Jaguars win. They win, maybe not decisively by scoreboard, but there is no doubt leaving the game that the Jaguars are clearly the better team and one of the best teams in the AFC. So You heard it here first. I think Jaguars improved to 6-2 this weekend. I think the Jaguars are going to go into their bye week at the best time possible because you can potentially get guys, back who are injured. Like they have a lot of important guys right now, like Zay Jones, obviously, Walker Little, Tyson Campbell, Devon Hamilton. Like they have a chance to be much better after the bye personnel wise than they are right now, which is scary because they are rolling right now. So that's my prediction. I think Jaguars win. They head into their Week 10 game against the Fighting Brock Purdy's 6-2. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not moved by Kenny Pickett. I'm not. I specifically remember him having a good preseason game against the Jaguars and a good drive and people freaking out. And no, he's not it, in my opinion. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm an idiot. I am an idiot, but I don't think I'm wrong in this case. So thank you guys for joining me. I know this was a shorter episode because I'm, going solo. I don't think you guys want to hear me talk to myself for an hour, though I could definitely do it. So thank you for joining me. Gus and I will be back on Monday to both review the Steelers game and also talk some trade deadline because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff out there in terms of stuff both I'm hearing and moves that just make sense. So that's a little, bait for you. Go ahead and take the cheese. Come back Monday and we'll be here. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. This is John Shipley and the Jaguar Report podcast.